Okay, so lots of things you can do to create a focal area. Think about it. Come up with some ideas. You may come up with some ideas about creating contrast or guiding the eye in ways that I will never think of, and come up with a unique approach to your portrait work. And we're familiar with the idea compositionally that balance is also one of those things that human beings at their gut level have a need for. And this, in fact, applies to a portrait. Yes, we all know, well, you're doing a landscape and there's a big bunch of trees over on one side of the image. Well, it feels kind of good to put a house or some other thing on the other side of the image so it doesn't feel excessively weighted to one side. We know this. We've heard this about balancing a composition in picture making and landscape painting. It also applies even to a quick classroom study vignetted portrait. Here's how. In this image, the same thing is happening. We look at her, we follow her gaze, and it makes this side of the image more important. It makes this side more visually active. And so it suits me in this composition to have these contrasts over on this side. It's kind of fun. It's kind of a counterpoint, her face, and then there's a secondary area of visual activity that I hope the viewer finds visually and graphically interesting. And the reason it's here on this side is because the pull of her gaze over on to this side. And notice how I'm carefully controlling the contrast down here. In real life, she had huge contrast down here. She's wearing these black overall style dress right up against a white blouse. There was tremendous contrast in all the folds down there, but that is not what my drawing is about. Remember, the drawings that tend to have strength are the ones that have distilled down something visually compelling about the subject and edited out anything that might be a distraction to that. So here's an example. This was done a long time ago. I think this was done back when I was in school. One of the drawings I had laying around in a portfolio. But I did one thing here that it's kind of, as a student, it was like the light dawning. And it's exactly this idea. I wanted to put a tone back here so that the hair, even though she's a brunette, I wanted a feeling of some light hitting her hair. Quick, it's a short pose. So I put this dark mask back here, but it made it just really heavy-handed there. It just felt right to come back in and with the shape trailing off in this direction to emphasize that, and to have this squiggle, that little splash of hair over on this side, to throw in that squiggle, which just felt right. Balance to give them a little bit more guts and visual interest. Here's a more recent image in a style that's developed, I guess, over the last couple of years with compressed charcoal, because I really like to do this kind of thing. I really like swinging the charcoal around and just having some fun with it and try and create some visual interest in the way the medium is used. I've been very flattered by a few students who have been interested in this style and have given it a shot, and I'm in favor of it if you want to. I don't mind at all if you want to try out this sort of thing. But I've seen a few students do this. They look at this and superficially they see, oh, Nathan kind of swings the charcoal around and creates some of these shapes to give a little extra visual interest, a little more activity to the subject. So I'll try that out and see if that might help out my work. And so it's a superficial style that they're noticing. And they'll just take this idea and put it any old place in their drawing without giving consideration to where or why it exists. This stuff, for me, goes beyond style. It serves a very important purpose, in my opinion. Here, I've done exactly what we talked about in focal area. I've created a strong contrast intentionally right here to strengthen the fact that your eye goes to this area first, most powerfully. But then it brings us back to the balance issue that it's so heavily weighted on this side. At the same time, I don't want to have my portrait be cut out. I don't want to have these razor sharp edges all the way around my portrait so it just feels cut out from a background. But I do want it to silhouette. I want the whole structure to have a nice silhouette to it. So by doing this kind of thing here, these harder outlined edges give me an overall silhouette. Dark against light, light against dark. I have one big silhouetted form to help that figure hold together. And by having some visual activity here on this side, I've counterbalanced, back to our word balance, the contrast that's on this side. I believe this drawing stylistically works not because of style, but because silhouetting is important for a figure to read and visual balance is important a figure to read. So I hope that your work does not get lost superficially in style.